Welcome to the First Down Football Show. I am your host, Andrew Gradinskas, and today we're going to be taking a look at this year's 2026 tight end class for the upcoming draft. Just a reminder, if you have not checked us out on YouTube, or if you're not currently watching us over on YouTube, I highly suggest going over there to see the graphics and a little bit more in-depth breakdown on the players. We're available on YouTube, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you like to get your social media. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting us off at 10, I have Dallin Bentley. This is a guy that made Mel Kiper's draft sleepers list back in January. He's a guy from Utah, comes in at 6'4", 259 pounds. Obviously, he's over 25. Before he starts the season, he'll be closer to 26. So that is a concern, and it's going to heavily affect his draft stock compared to other tight ends as well. He tracks the deep ball extremely well. He's a natural over-the-shoulder catcher. He was a John Mackey semifinalist, which is the best tight end in college football award, so obviously there's some merit to his production this last season. And he's a strong run blocker as well. Where he lacks the skill set is he doesn't have that straight line speed. Obviously, a guy who's a little bit older and bigger than some of the other tight ends in the class doesn't have that athleticism that we'll see from some other tight ends on this list. Limited production before 2025. This is his first year where he has been able to produce. So, what does that point to? Is it a one-year wonder, or is it something with the coaching and the scheme fit? What is, the credit for this breakout season for Bentley? And then, like I previously mentioned, the age concern. Obviously, he's over 25 already. And, we've heard Akeem Mesidor, the edge rusher for Miami, get a lot of backlash for being 25. And he's a guy that has first-round talent. Bentley is a guy who has day 3 talent, and he's over 25. So I would not be surprised if he slips into the 7th round or potentially undrafted free agent just because of the age concern. But he will be on an NFL roster. I have a day 3 grade on him. I'd be comfortable with him in the 6th round, 7th round, that range right there. But I won't spend too much time on number 10 here. Number 9, I have Jack Endries, a guy from Texas. I will say it was really difficult to rank the guys from probably 5 to 9. I think they're all interchangeable. They're all kind of in the same group. But a couple of notes on Endries. He's coming from Texas, 6'4", comes in at 236, which is a little light for a tight end. He's 22. Some of his strengths are he has position versatility. He's lined up in line, at H-back and slot. And he has good route running ability as well, which has been huge for tight ends and their success in the NFL over the last couple of years. Like I mentioned, he's a big receiving threat. He has the receiver skill set. Some weaknesses are he lacks size to be an elite blocker, which limits his ability to be a 3-down tight end. So someone that may come in early downs when you're running 12 personnel. But and can play on 3rd down out of the slot as a tight end if you're pairing him with a blocking tight end, but leaves a lot to be desired if you're trying to develop him to be a tight end one someday. He's a tweener, he's too light to play tight end, but maybe too heavy and lacks an elite skill set to play true receiver. So he's going to have to put on some mass to be successful at the next level, and then limited production. He just hasn't had some of the yardages and production outputs as some of the other guys in the same group. And so for that reason, I have Endries at my tight end 9 spot. And again, a day 3 grade on him. At 8, I have Oscar Delp. And I know we just talked about the production for Endries, and Delp's in that same boat where he has little to no production from the tight end position. Delp, a guy from Georgia, comes in at 6'5", 245 pounds, just over the age of 22. Some of his strengths are he's an explosive athlete. He ran a 4.52 40, which is extremely impressive for a guy in that position and that size. He's alignment versatility, like we mentioned with Endries. He can line up in line, he can line up at the H back position, and he can line up in the slot as well. So two similar prospects. I have Delp over Endries just because of the higher athletic ceiling. I think that allows Delp to be a little bit more of a high ceiling player than Endries. He has strong hands. He doesn't have any drop concerns. Like I said, like lacks weight a little bit, 245. Again, I'm not a guy that you're gonna, have playing three downs. His run blocking needs improvement, which limits his ability to play on early downs, and he has limited production. He never had more than 300 yards in a season, which is concerning. I know he's been behind some talented tight ends at Georgia, but given the opportunities that he's had, he's a guy that, every year we're talking about, can he put it together? Can he be the guy that drives that offense for Georgia? And whether it's scheme or personnel, he just never was able to put a season together that warranted, a high draft pick. So I have a day three grade on Delp. I think I'd be comfortable with him, in the fifth or sixth round, maybe a little bit above Bentley and Endries. But overall, a guy that I'm not super high on. I know some people are higher on Delp. I've seen him graded as early as a round three guy. I'm not that high on him, but I think he definitely warrants a selection here in day three. At seven, I have Nate Borkorcher, guy from Texas A&M, 6'4", 250 pounds. He's a little bit on the older side as well. He's 24. Some of his strengths are, he is a true blocking tight end, which I think is extremely valuable in the NFL still. It's something that a lot of guys coming to the league lack, and a lot of guys specifically in this draft class lack. So Borkorcher sets himself apart with his ability to be a great blocker. He's probably the best blocking tight end in this class. That's a true tight end. He's a reliable pass catcher, and he's a smart route runner. He doesn't have that elite athleticism. He's a below average athlete, but he's able to find space and he knows how to get himself open. Very limited yards after catch production. He just that's just not his skill set, and he also has limited production from a yards and receptions standpoint. I mean, he only had 19 catches last year, so this is going to be a guy that you're bringing in for depth, a guy that you're bringing in because of his blocking ability and hoping to develop the pass catching ability and, develop his ability to affect the pass game as well. So, Borkorcher, I think I'm a little bit higher on than some people, but I really value the blocking tight end. I think that's something that he can do at a high level in the National Football League. At six, I have Justin Joly from NC State. Comes in at 6'3", 263 pounds, just under 22 years old. He is a great contested catch. He's a great contested catcher. He has that ability. He's a red zone weapon. He scored 7 touchdowns in 2025, and he has slot versatility as well. I think when you watch him from a body type standpoint and his ability to work in space, you see a lot of the Isaiah Likely type tight ends, Chig Okonkwo, like that type of tight end, an Njoku style. Some of his weaknesses are he's an inconsistent blocker, which limits his ability to play three downs. Again, I mean, it's very repetitive throughout this class, but it's something that shows up time and time again. And he lacks straight line speed. You'd like to see a guy as athletic on tape as Jolie is and as good of a receiver he is. You'd like to see him run a little bit faster. He ran a 4.75 40 time, which isn't awful, but compared to some of the other tight ends in the class who have similar skill sets, they just are a little bit more athletic. So that's why I have Jolie coming in here at 6. I have a fourth round grade on him. And he's a guy that I think could be higher on this list as well. He had a solid Senior Bowl, nothing crazy, but a great season for NC State, and I think warrants a fourth round selection. At 5, I have Eli Raridan, and I've seen people have this guy rated all over the board, whether it's going in the 6th or 7th round or here as early as four. I have him in the fourth round. I think he's a guy that potentially has a lot of upside. He's coming from Notre Dame. He's 6'7", tallest tight end I have on this list, 252 pounds, and he's 22 years old. He's an exceptional frame. He has that prototypical tight end size, and he's an effective blocker, which gives him the ability to play all three downs at the tight end position. Some of his weaknesses are his injury history. He's had two ACL tears on his right knee. One was in high school, and then one was in 2022. He lacks the elite separation that you'd like to see, especially compared to some of the other tight ends in this class who have that more receiver skill set. And he has minimal yards after catch ability. But I think when you look at effective tight ends that can come in and produce for you and be a big part of your offense, it's guys like Reardon, guys who can play three downs, effective in the run game, and then also is reliable in the pass game. So I think Reardon is a guy that warrants a fourth round selection and would be, I don't want to say instant impact guy, but a guy that can come in, you can develop and be a solid number two tight end and develop into a potential tight end one for your team. At four, I have Michael Trigg. I think this is another guy that, we talked about always, it felt like he was going to break out every year, and the guy just never really put it together. He's bounced around from Ole Miss to USC, or he started at USC to Ole Miss, I think, and then Baylor. Comes in at 6'4", 240 pounds. Again, kind of, due to the fact that he's a redshirt senior. He's 23, about to be 24 before the start of the season. He is that true, receiving tight end. He's a great catch radius, and he is a great playmaker. And this is kind of highlighted by the fact that he set the Baylor single game tight end record with 155 yards against Kansas State. Some of his weaknesses are his blocking. Again, the common theme with this class is the undersized tight ends that struggle to block. Trigg fits that mold. He got a lot of usage in the slot, so it's not your typical inline tight end, a guy with his hand in the dirt. So it's going to fit some teams, and for some teams he will be completely off the board due to that. And he doesn't have a tight end one skill set, like I mentioned. If you just can't block at a high level or at a average level, you're going to struggle to be on the field in run situations. So Trigg is a guy that will probably go in the fourth round or potentially later. I think he's worth a fourth round pick because of his versatility in the pass game, and I think if he lands with the right team, his versatility will be huge for a particular type of offense that likes to use their tight ends out in space. But it's going to be interesting to see what teams are high on Trigg and what teams, aren't going to pull the trigger on Trigg just because he doesn't fit that skill set that they're looking for in the tight end position. But I think he's worth a fourth round pick. At three, I have Eli Stowers, which actually might be a surprise. I think he's a pretty overall consensus tight end too. Um, he's coming from Vandy. He comes in at 6'4", 235 pounds. He's about to turn 23. Some of his strengths, obviously. He's an elite athlete. Had a great combine. He's the typical receiver skill set that you like to see out of your tight ends. He's a smooth route runner as well. Some of his weaknesses are he blocking is almost non-existent, and this shows up on film time and time again, which is extremely concerning for a guy that you're potentially selecting in the second round to be your starting tight end. I think a lot of teams are going to value him as a receiver that can, a big slot receiver, which may hurt his draft stock. There's no doubt that he is a great pass catcher, but in terms of being a prototypical tight end, a guy that can affect the game on all three downs, Stowers just lacks the things that I like to see from my tight ends. So I have a day two grade on him. He'd probably be pretty firmly in the third round for me. like I mentioned, undersized frame, and due to that, he struggles in traffic. If which is concerning for a tight end. If you can't catch the ball in traffic, your draft stock's going to fall a little bit. But he is a natural receiver, and so I think teams may value him more as a receiver than a tight end. And so we could see his draft stock go, at a wide array of different areas. But I have a day two grade on him, and the guy I have over him at tight end two is Max Clare. It's a guy, he come from Ohio State, and that offense just has so much talent that he kind of got overlooked. He didn't have crazy production because of the receiving threats on that roster. He's 6'5", 243 pounds. He's going to be 23 here soon. And he is the best route running tight end in the class. He has great hands, and he has great athleticism as well for a tight end. Um, Something that is a common theme throughout the top three guys in this class, the tight end class. His blocking needs a little bit of work, but he's a more refined blocker than Stowers. So I'd be more inclined to take Clare before Stowers. Like I mentioned, lack of serious production. I believe he had 400 yards, just over 400 yards last season. And he could add mass as well to improve, being able to block true defensive ends, something that he struggled with a little bit at Ohio State. But overall, Clare is a guy I'm comfortable taking, late second round. But definitely, I would say my firmly tight end two here in this class over a guy like Stowers. And at number one, I don't think it's really much of a surprise. I have Kenyon Sadiq coming from Oregon, 6'3", 245 pounds. He's 21 years old, so he's still young. He's an elite athlete. He broke the combine record for tight ends, running a 4.39 40, which is just unbelievable from the tight end position. But the thing that solidifies him as the number one tight end in this class is that he's a great blocker. Dan Lanning said to go watch his film, just to cut up film of him as a blocker. And he is kicking dude's ass, for lack of a better phrase. And that's something that is so vital for the tight end position. And he combines that with a receiver skill set. You can line him up in the slot. He can play that H-back role, but he can also play in line tight end, true tight end. Some of his weaknesses are, obviously lacking elite production in that Oregon offense. He had just over 500 yards. You like to see that number be a little bit higher. You look at some of the tight ends that have been drafted highly over the last couple of years in the first round. Their production numbers are a little bit higher than that. He's less than ideal weight, and he could improve as a route runner. I think some teams might be scared off from drafting a guy like Sadiq because of this type of tight end we've seen in the past. You think of guys like O.J. Howard, and even like Hayden Hurst, a guy that really was a great blocker, but worked a lot out of the slot there at South Carolina. Two former first-round tight ends that just really didn't pan out in the NFL. But then you see guys, this past year like Colston Loveland, who spent a lot of his time in Chicago, standing up as a tight end in a two-point stance, in a receiver stance. And I think Sadiq can be the next version of that for a team. I have a top 20 grade on him. He's not a guy that I would take in the top 10, and I don't even think I would be comfortable taking him in the top 15, but I think I look at the Bucks, I look at the Panthers, I look at teams that really need the explosion from the tight end position that have been lacking. Especially with the Panthers, they've had a couple tight ends there that just really haven't panned out. Whether it was Jatavian Sanders or Tommy Tremble, guys just didn't pan out. So I think Sadiq could be the missing piece to that offense. But I think whatever team selects Sadiq, his success in the NFL is going to be based on how he's utilized in the offense. That's going to do it for today. Those are my rankings for this year's tight end class. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.